Well, hello there, and welcome to the Radical World podcast. My name is Jose Leal. My partner, Matt Perez, isn't here today, but we do have two awesome guests from Sacramento, California, sitting on either end of what I presume is a bar, but I'm not quite sure. Uh, Both David Gull and Daniel Yambor. Did I pronounce that right, David?
You did.
Awesome. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us here.
Absolutely. I heard about you guys and what you're doing over there, and I had to try to figure out how to learn about what you're doing, because what we talk about here on Radical World is new types of organizations, how we're going to come onto developing these types of organizations. And I believe that really co-ops are sort of the seed of one aspect of organizations, which is co-ownership. So I'd love to learn about you guys personally, how you got here, and what it is that you're doing with your organization.
Yeah. Daniel, you want to
start? Sure. I've been here for 3.5 years. Originally, I was a veteran. I went to school, got a bachelor's of science in environmental science. I did that work for a little bit and realized it wasn't for me. Wanted something laid back. I got into the beer industry, and 3.5 years later, here we are. So,
yeah, and I'm Dave. I'm the founder at New Helvetia. We're approaching our 12th anniversary. We started as a brewery to celebrate Sacramento, and there's really sort of a rich beer history here in Sacramento. And we wanted to create a brewery that recognizes that and celebrates it, and sort of creates a community around it. And I think in doing so, we've really kind of expanded upon that idea of community. Besides just celebrating, Sacramento and Sacramento history and stories, we're trying to celebrate the people of Sacramento. And I think this co-op conversion model is a way to start to do that. That really hasn't been done anywhere in California. We started as a very traditional model brewery. So my wife and I and a couple of investment partners started the brewery, and sort of as things started to evolve, and we were looking for ways to capitalize the brewery and ways to sort of truly connect with community, the co-op idea really it really stood above the rest. There's other, co-ownership models, employee ownership models like ESOPs, and employees can also, have standard stock options in a business, any business really. But it felt like a way to truly bring it down to earth and make it accessible to all of the employees, and open the doors for the community to become owners as well.
That's the thing that I found really interesting. It's, worker-owned co-ops, which I really don't like the term, because it really makes it not feel like I'm an owner that happens to work there, but I'm a worker who happens to own it. And to me, there's a bit of a difference there. Maybe, I don't know if that has a vibe for you, Daniel, but for the idea that you guys brought the community in on this, did you see a model somewhere else that sort of said, hey, how do we engage the community as well? Or was that a novel idea from you guys?
I think originally, just from the get-go, I think we didn't want to do this without the community, partnership. We wanted to see, how the community viewed us, right? So by bringing the community in, I think it allowed them, one, to buy in on something, but then at the same time, for a lot of people, this is their, local watering hole, and they didn't want to see that leave. And they're, by buying in is showing their support of what this place really means to them. We're very small. We have 9 employees, and I think for us, we didn't want to have to take all this on without the involvement of the local community and people here in the neighborhood and around.
Mm-hmm. Would you think that your colleagues feel like owners, or they just have a bit of the business, and so that's nice, but did it change how they saw their role in the business?
I think it did. We got to a point a couple months ago where sales were stagnant and we weren't brewing, so that like the cog came to a stop. And so we reached out. And we're like, hey, we need another infusement, and everybody was just so happy. They were like, this is what it's all about. And we asked everybody to donate, or to give $25, and people were giving 100, people were 200. And they were like, this is why we wanted to do this, is because we wanted to, when there's a need, that's what we're here for. And so I guess it's almost like, crowdfunding, but crowdfunding with people that actually, have a stake in this.
Right. So tell me about like the community piece, because you talk about it's the local watering hole. People have been there for 12 years coming around. How did they react to this idea that they could here? I happen to be right now in Italy, but I'm originally from Portugal, and Europe has this history of owning the sports clubs. The community owns the sports clubs, right? Like it's you're not just a member, you're an associate of the club. And I never really understood that as a kid when I lived in Portugal. My dad would say, I'm an associate of such and such a club. And I'm like, what does that mean? I didn't get it because I'd already gotten used to the American model. How did people react to that?
Well, we launched it about this
go ahead,
time
Dave.
last year, and the initial reaction was really positive. We had, I think we had, in the first month, close to 150 people sign up. And then that sort of, after the holidays, it slows down, right? And, then we just sort of became more of a, we have to really get the message out about what it means to be a co-op. One of the examples we use, since you're talking about sports clubs, is in the NFL, the Green Bay Packers are owned by the community. The NFL franchise is owned by the fans, right? So that really became something that we could say, look, this is not a new model. A lot of what we have to do is educate people about what it means to be part of a co-op. Since it's not a traditional financial structure, I think people just don't always quite understand it. It's not intuitive unless we explain it to them, or unless they're already part of an existing co-op elsewhere. Like we have a grocery store co-op here in town. Some people might be members of, REI is a major like outdoor recreation clothing store, and they're a co-op. Very different models, but people they start to understand what it means. I mean, we're really doing this at a Main Street level. We're a very small brewery. I think this is about a 5,000 square foot building. Like Daniel says, we have like 9-10 employees, and getting that community involvement was something we wanted to do, but it's also really a necessity. Like we had to have kind of a larger base of potential co-op member owners to join the team. And once we put that call out, people started to pay attention, especially, hyper local, right in the neighborhood, right in the community, where it made sense for them to, keep a building occupied that had one of their favorite pubs, keep a brand that honors, Sacramento history, keep all of the employees working that are part of the new co-op management structure going forward. There's really a lot of good that can come out of this, and us being really the first co-op conversion in California. California is obviously it's a big state. We're the state with the most number of craft beer breweries, in the U.S., and there's not another commercial co-op brewery here. So we would be the first to transition from a traditional ownership model to a co-op ownership model, and that there's no roadmap for that. We're figuring it out as we go along.
Well, I'll say that there's, and you probably know of these folks, Slice of New York.
We've heard of a few of the employee co-ops out there.
Right.
We got a bakery in Oakland, I think, and
Yeah.
LA has one too. So there's been other businesses that have done this. And this is just how I feel about it. I don't know how Daniel feels about it, but it seems to me that a business like ours that, we manufacture something, we create a product that can go out into the marketplace. And having that, I think, is unique. I don't know that the co-op model works for every single type of business out there, but certainly I do believe it's a really viable structure for a local brewery. And, some of the other models like pizza places, bakeries, that can also work. But I don't think every single bar or restaurant has that potential to be a co-op conversion, unless it's serving a specific purpose of like maintaining like the one pub in the small town type of thing.
Why do you say that? What do you think would prevent that from being true?
Probably just the abundance of them. And I'm happy to be proven wrong on this. If more businesses are able to go down the co-op ownership path, I would highly support that. Why I think is just mostly because I think having a product that is manufactured and being an actual manufacturing facility gives us an ability to be a co-op, do this transition, and continue to not only raise capital but start to drive revenue and be a truly successful, financially successful business that the co-op members will benefit from. And getting it there, I think, is a huge part of our challenge, but also that's the direction we're heading.
And the organization, like I see, even if I'm not producing products, I'm a regular small restaurant. And when I say small, I don't mean, a very niche, but having everybody be a co-owner of the organization and have both a say and the ability to benefit financially from the ownership of the organization above and beyond the, being an employee. To me, that seems like a natural fit for a community business.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I said, I'm happy to be proven wrong. And
Yeah.
in fact, in the state of California, recently has passed several legislation to really encourage co-op conversions of existing businesses. I think they recognize that there is a sort of a looming retirement crisis that will ultimately mean a lot of Main Street businesses are going to start shutting down unless there's some other pathway to keep them open. And they've identified that the co-op conversion model is really one of those great ways to do it. And we're kind of doing this without a lot of roadmap to follow.
Right.
There are examples out there, and there's co-op entities that sort of study this. Until you get into the trenches and start doing it, it's really hard to say, oh, well, they did it. This is how you do it.
Right.
Everyone is different. It depends on the people that are doing it, having the team in place to do it, having the customer base that, would ideally become part of that co-op ownership as well. You have to have all those pieces in place. And it took us, 10 plus years to kind of build that up.
Right. And did you have a history in co-ops at all prior to this in any way, shape, or form?
I had been a member of REI, and I had shopped at the Sacramento Foods Co-op. We had, as a brewery, we sell beer to some of the Northern California co-ops. But really, no, I hadn't. And I just love that idea of sort of spreading the equity and having, more community ownership, more employee ownership and buy-in and control.
One of the things that we talk a lot about is interdependence, right? Life is an interdependent process, right? Like everything we do is based on the fact that something or someone has done something else, right? I wouldn't have gotten here if there wasn't a pilot. There weren't people who built the plane, and there weren't people who sucked fuel out of the ground to make that happen. All of that stuff, we forget about it. It just sort of happens, right? And I think that at the local community, some of that interdependence has kind of disappeared. we can just go to the Costco, buy the thing. We don't need to know who they are. We don't need to care if they're doing well, because, it's just Costco and it's just a good price and we're done. And there isn't a relationship, and you can't really benefit Costco as a consumer locally, right? Because it's not a relationship with the people at Costco. It's an organization that those local people don't actually have the power to have a relationship locally in the same way that local businesses do. And so much of what you're describing to me is about reintegrating interdependence into our communities, where people participate in the organizations that are serving them and that they're benefiting from, and vice versa. So let me ask you a question about how does a community member benefit? Obviously from drinking great beer, but what else?
I think one is just keeping this place here, right, for other people to enjoy. Most of our members have had or have a relationship with the employees here, and just keeping this place existing keeps people employed, and then in turn they can see their favorite beer tender and on Friday nights and have those conversations. Most of our members, we know them and they know us, and I think just having that place where we can have that dialogue, be like, hey, how's so and so today, or I heard about your surgery, I hope you're doing good. Just that interpersonal connections that we have with our members, I think, is very important, and I think they like that and we like that.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of at the crawling stage, so we haven't even really started walking, and we want to get ramped up and start running soon, but we're still at the very beginning of this, and the community that is getting behind it, all the things Daniel talked about are absolutely true. They want to make sure that this business stays viable and has an opportunity to grow and thrive. A co-op is for the benefit of its members. And one of the pieces of that is that, the community will grow and thrive. That also benefits the members, right? To keep all of this action and activity happening here. But there's also opportunity to sort of expand this beyond our current location, our current corner. We're sort of blessed with an opportunity to take our brand to the Sacramento International Airport. And that will be a big boost to, not only the brand and the sales. I think it'll be kind of a point of pride when our co-op members are traveling through the airport and they're like, that's my brewery. How cool is that?
Absolutely. And that's what I think this idea of a community-owned organization really is compelling, because there's so much human connection, relationship, pride in being associated with something and being not only a part of it, but a sustainer of it, which really sounds like that's, you guys are picking up on that. It is people wanting things to be successful and wanting to be a part of that process.
I think some of the ideas, the fresh ideas that have come out in the last couple of months, have been through board meetings with our community board members that have come up with ideas and be like, why aren't you guys doing this? And then it's like a light bulb comes off, like, oh my gosh, that is something totally we could do, and then implement it. And those are things that are coming from the community side. So it's, I don't know, I think it's great.
It's one thing to have a customer. It's another thing to have somebody engaged in your organization, right?
Exactly.
And supporting you in that way. So I'd love to dig in a little bit into the mechanics of it. You've got obviously lots of community members. You've got the 10 employee members as well. What's the structure from the board or
Sure.
management process?
Sure. So we have a 9-person board. It's 5 employees and 4 community members.
Wow.
We kicked around the idea of the size of the board, and I think 9 just the more ideas and brains working together is going to help.
You just
make this
copied the
place
Supreme
successful.
Court. That's all you did.
Yeah.
You just like,
Yeah,
it works for
exactly.
them, it'll work for us.
Honestly, it was more of seeing what other co-ops have, and then just be like, well, we're going to do that too. Just through the process. Structurally, day-to-day operations, I guess that would be, I oversee that. There hasn't been a real problem where I have to go to the board for something. I think that's more of expenditure that's going to be over a normal day-to-day. Like we had to buy a huge piece of equipment, that would be something to go to the board and ask for. But then at the same time, all of our other employees, the employees that work here, they're responsible for this place too. I don't manage people, I lead a team, where we kick ideas off. So our part-time person that works 1 day a week, if they have an idea, we don't just chuck that. We think about it, and if it's a great idea, we implement it. I mean, it's going to take a team here to run this place, even though we're small, but we're not going to be small forever. And that's how I look at it.
And I think the nuts and bolts of trying to do a conversion like this, obviously it requires 2 parties. You have to have, the willing sellers of the business, and Daniel and the employee crew willing to take on those leadership roles, and then, coupled with the community co-op members. So it's really sort of it's still a transaction in the traditional sense, but not in the, I'm not trying to sell a business for the sake of selling a business and get the most out of it. I'm trying to build a community. And I think people that have joined the co-op that know our New Helvetia story and know Daniel and know me, they know that we're about the place and the people and the community, and it's not about the dollar. And we're doing everything we can to support making this this co-op successful. And it's hard work. What we're also realizing is that the employee team that is running the co-op and running the business simultaneously, it's a heavy lift, and it starts to become there's competing interests. There's different priorities that take place, and have to. It becomes a difficult juggling act to do both the co-op and the business operations. And Daniel's kind of struggling through a lot of that right now, trying to figure out how best to push this whole thing forward.
Tell me a little bit about that. That's interesting. I had never thought about that. What are the features or the bugs, sometimes we call it in the tech industry, that you're experiencing?
Well, I think for me, it's try not to do everything, right? So I can't run the co-op and run the business. I got to pass some of that off. So, when I get emails saying, well, the board needs to talk about X, Y, and Z, I say, well, I'm not the board president. You should talk to them. I'm just a member of the board. I got to be able to compartmentalize, like, okay, I'm used to having multiple things at once, but I can't do that. So I got to learn to pass some of this stuff off. And, if you have a question about the business, I am happy to talk to you about that. But if it's the board and the co-op, I'll give you to our board president, who is Tommy McNamara, and he could talk to you about, the steps being taken. Originally I was, helping run the business and setting the co-op up at the same time. And I will tell you that, I was like, I'm going to get burned out doing this, and I got to pass some of this stuff off because I'm not going to be able to do all of it. And, I still have a home life.
What?
I have a husband and some kids, and, I have things I got to do outside of here. So I can't go home and take this home every day and think about, New Helvetia every day of the week.
Is there hope that you will spend a little less time doing this and then more time with the family?
Oh, sure. So we hope to get to a point where this thing just runs on its own. There's, the process is in place and everybody knows their role and they just execute, and it's just a smooth sailing. But we're just starting, so there's going to be some kinks to work out, and that's where all the time and energy goes into. So you could take that step back and be like, wow, look what I just did, and it's looking
Look
at
what
the
we just did.
true, yes. Absolutely. Thank you for correcting me on that.
Well, and that, I think that's part of the thing, right? There's a sense of camaraderie, right? That it's not, yes, I did it, but as you said, you're a leader. And when the team does something, I've been a leader. When a team does something, there's pride in their ability to step up and get that done. And very often, we kind of lose out on that because we don't have that relationship with those teams that would allow us for that. Let me ask you another question, because when you talk about that process being difficult, how long did it take to do this transition for you guys?
I would say that it's still going on. So we started this in almost a year ago, and I would say that it's still process and it's not finished yet until this sale is passed off, and we are 100%. The co-op owns 100% of New Helvetia Brewing Company. I don't think that this process is gonna stop. So I'm hoping by the summertime we should have kind of we've done this and we're doing it, and it should be to a point where we can just let this machine just kind of move itself. But until then, I think there's a lot of hard work we still have to do to be able to get to a point where we're running, and we're learning every day. Like there's some things that we're like, wow, we forgot about this in the bylaws. We got to update that. There's someone brings up a point where it's like, oh, you forgot about this. Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that's moving.
Yeah, it's an endless thing, and it's complicated enough to run a business.
And Daniel
Absolutely.
had started all of the co-op, the legal side, and creating the co-op bylaws and forming the interim board that kind of allowed all that structure to be adopted and enacted to put us in this position to right now we're going into our first permanent board elections, and then use kind of the momentum of that to go into sort of the first draft of the actual sales agreement between the brewery and the co-op. There are those nuts and bolts things that aren't exciting to talk about, but they're necessary to make all of this move forward.
And they're often what causes these things to fail, because it's not an easy process to take everything through that stage. And it sounds like you guys have done this in a fairly quick order, because I know of some transformations that have taken 2-3 years to get done. So that sounds like you guys are ahead of the game.
Yeah, I think with it being teed up like this, it gives us a chance to try to do it in a way that doesn't debt burden the co-op, to put it on the most solid footing possible to move forward. It's we don't want to have this fail right out of the gate and fall flat. We want to give it every chance. And so we're reaching out. We're trying to get more community members involved. We're trying to spread the word among partner organizations, not only existing co-ops, but other local Sacramento area businesses and entities like Alchemist and some of the civic amenities locally, the chambers. We're trying to get the word out as far and wide as possible. And that messaging is hard to do, again, because you're educating at the same time you're trying to get somebody to buy into a new concept, and it's difficult. It
is, and it's I can imagine how for a lot of people it's such a foreign thing that it's like you basically have to sort of teach them that there's a different world out there than what they're used to. Buying a beer and owning a piece of the beer you're buying, that's a very different thing.
And people have different values, and the reasons why they would choose to be part of a co-op brewery or not will largely have to do with which values they want to they see in us. I think sometimes you can't make that connection, but we really have to try it. We have to, let it be known that we're about the community. We're about shared ownership. We're about, raising up employees. And there's some things like with, member education, members helping members. I mean, we kind of could become our own ecosystem of sorts. We don't want it to be an exclusive club. It's open to all, but we want to make it known that, this community of co-op members can help each other. And how do we get that message out and start to demonstrate that? The other one thing I want to make, because I know we're running out of time, is what if we could start to use this model in other areas around, in a community, other businesses that, it might work for, if we can demonstrate it, we can show them the way. I think that there's that's a great idea to me. That just sounds like
absolutely. Absolutely. I like to call them collaborative networks because it's one thing for us to own a business. It's another thing to own 2 or 3 businesses, for everybody to sort of cross-pollinate. And we're back to being more increasingly interdependent in our transactional world.
Yeah.
But you're right, David. We are going to stop now. I'm going to introduce our next week. I really enjoyed this conversation, by the way. I'd like to come back and talk a little bit more when you come back, talk a little bit more about your vision of what that looks like, expanding into the community, and dig a little deeper into the work that you guys have done. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks.
I'm going to introduce our next guest for next week, which is Francois Conachel, pardon me, from the Go Fish Collective. Francois is, I think, in the UK, so I'm looking forward to that conversation. The conversation around rethinking collaboration, unlearn to relearn. I'm not a fan of that concept, but I'm going to explore that conversation with Francois, and I look forward to that. Again, David, Daniel, thank you for joining me today here on a Radical World podcast. And let's do this again in a few weeks and carry the conversation. I'd love to learn how we can help you guys through this process of moving forward and building community around your business and your community of ownership.
Thank you so much. Let's do it.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome, guys. See ya.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.